I regret the day you came into this world. You took your mother from me. You wretched child.
Father, please don't destroy it. This is all I have.
Your career ends here. I will never let you enjoy the life that should have been hers.
Why would a father hate his own daughter so much? Sit back and let me take you on this journey. Welcome to Talking African Tales, home of beautiful African stories. Amora was a woman of extraordinary beauty and even greater talent. She was married to Kofi, a kind and devoted man who loved her deeply. Their life together was full of joy and promise, at least until Amora became pregnant. From the moment she conceived, Amora's health began to fail. She moved from one healer to the next, visiting herbalists and traditional birth attendants across the region. Kofi spent every coin he had earned on her care, determined to save both his wife and their unborn child. Despite her suffering, Amora remained hopeful. She would often smile weakly at Kofi and say, "Our child will be worth all of this pain." The day Amora went into labor, the small house filled with tension and fear. She screamed and clutched the worn sheets, her body trembling violently. The midwife examined her and shook her head gravely. "This will be very difficult," she warned. "The baby is not positioned well. I need leaves to help ease the birth, or we may lose them both." Without hesitation, Kofi rushed into the forest. His heart pounded as he searched desperately among the thick undergrowth. Finally, he found the plant and quickly gathered the leaves. He ran back home as fast as his legs could carry him, clutching the precious herbs in his hands. When he burst through the door, breathless and sweating, he immediately began preparing the medicine. He crushed the leaves, mixed them with water, and heated the mixture over the fire. His hands worked frantically, his eyes darting between the herbs and his suffering wife. Just as he finished preparing the medicine and turned to bring it to Amora, he heard a sharp cry, the wail of a newborn baby. The midwife held up a tiny, wriggling infant. "It's a girl," she announced. Kofi's heart leaped with joy. He rushed to his wife's side with the medicine. But the moment he looked at her face, his world shattered. Amora's eyes were closed. Her chest was still. Her hand lay limp at her side. "No, no, no, no," Kofi whispered, dropping the bowl. The medicine spilled across the floor. "Amora, Amora, wake up." The midwife bowed her head. "She gave everything to bring this child into the world. Her spirit has left us." Kofi collapsed beside the bed, clutching his wife's cold hand. His sobs filled the small room, raw and broken. The baby cried in the midwife's arms, but Kofi could not look at her. All he could see was the woman he loved, now gone forever. When the midwife placed the baby in Kofi's arms for the first time, he stared down at the tiny face. He wanted to feel love. He wanted to feel the joy Amora had promised. But all he felt was a burning rage. "This child took her from me," he thought bitterly. "She is the reason Amora is dead. I will name you Nia," he said coldly, his voice empty of warmth. "But know this, you cost me everything." From that day forward, the house became a place of silence and shadows. Kofi's love for his daughter was buried beneath layers of grief and resentment. Every time Nia laughed, he remembered Amora's laughter. Every time Nia smiled, he saw Amora's face and felt the loss all over again. He fed her and clothed her, but he never held her gently. He never sang to her or told her stories. His words were always sharp, his tone always cold. "You are a burden," he would say. "You bring nothing but pain." Nia grew up walking on eggshells, always careful not to make noise or draw attention. She learned to eat quickly and speak softly, hoping that if she stayed small enough, her father might one day see her without anger in his eyes. She longed for his love, but the only warmth in that house came from the memories of a mother she never knew. Before her death, Amora had been the most celebrated seamstress in the village. Her hands could transform simple cloth into garments so beautiful they seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. People traveled from distant towns just to commission her work. Kofi had been building a workshop for her, planning to help her expand her craft into a thriving business. But when Amora died, he abandoned the half-finished structure. He locked away her sewing tools, her fabrics, and her patterns. He could not bear to look at them. The dream died with her. But something unexpected happened. As Nia grew, It became clear that she had inherited her mother's gift. By the time she was 8 years old, her small hands moved naturally over needles and thread, weaving patterns that seemed to dance with life. Whenever her father was away, Nia would carefully retrieve scraps of cloth and old thread from forgotten corners of the house. She would sit quietly in the backyard under the mango tree and sew, her fingers moving with a grace and skill that seemed impossible for someone so young. In those moments, the world faded away. It was just her, the thread, and the quiet joy of creation. For the first time, she felt at peace. One day, Nia accompanied her father to the market. As they walked through the crowded stalls, her eyes caught sight of a weaver creating an intricate garment. She stopped and stared, mesmerized by the movement of the needle and the beauty of the cloth. Kofi noticed and grabbed her arm roughly. "Don't you ever let me catch you looking at that again," he hissed. "Do you hear me? You will never touch a needle. You will never become like her." Nia nodded quickly, fear tightening her chest. But the longing in her heart did not fade. From that day on, she practiced in secret. She hid scraps of fabric under loose floorboards and tucked needles into small boxes behind old pots. She worked quietly, always listening for her father's footsteps, always ready to hide her work. But as the old saying goes, all days are for the thief, but one day is for the owner. One afternoon, Kofi's sharp eyes caught a loose thread hanging from Nia's sleeve. His face darkened instantly. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice low and dangerous. Before she could answer, he grabbed her arm and pulled her into the house. He tore through her belongings until he found the cloth she had been working on, a small, beautifully stitched piece with delicate patterns. For a moment, he stared at it in silence. Then his face twisted with rage. "You think you can do what she did?" he shouted. "You think you have a right to chase a dream? You? Who took her life?" "Father, please," Nia's voice trembled. But Kofi did not listen. He grabbed the cloth and ripped it apart with his bare hands, tearing it into pieces and scattering them across the floor. Nia's heart shattered. Kofi's laughter was bitter and cruel. "You will never leave this miserable life," he spat. "You made my life a living hell, and we will suffer together. Do you understand? You will grow up to bring nothing but pain, just like the day your mother died." And so it continued. Every piece Nia made was destroyed. Every design she poured her heart into was burned, cut, or torn apart. She learned to bite back her tears and swallow her pain. But even in the darkest nights, her hands still moved. She would pick up needle and thread and begin again, feeling the faint flicker of hope that refused to die. Somewhere deep inside, a fire burned. It was fragile and trembling, but it was alive. And one day, she believed it would shine bright enough for the world to see. One morning, the village erupted with excitement. The king's messengers rode through the streets, announcing a grand competition. "The prince is turning 21, they proclaimed. "His Majesty seeks the finest royal regalia ever created, ceremonial attire worthy of a prince on his coming-of-age celebration. The one who creates the winning regalia will receive land, gold, and a place among the kingdom's most honored artisans." The entire village buzzed with energy. Tailors and seamstresses rushed to gather the finest fabrics. Artisans from neighboring regions arrived to share techniques. The marketplace overflowed with colors, textures, and the hum of sewing machines. Nia listened from the corner of their small compound, her heart racing. This was the chance she had been waiting for her entire life. This was her opportunity to show the world what she could do. But fear gripped her chest. If her father discovered she had entered the competition, he would destroy everything. She knew him too well. Still, the fire inside her refused to be extinguished. "I have to try," she thought, "even if it costs me everything." Nia began to prepare. She woke before dawn and slipped out of the house while her father still slept. She would run to the outskirts of the village, to the old mango tree where no one ever came, and there she would sew. Her fingers moved with precision and care, stitching patterns no one had ever seen before. She used colors that complemented each other perfectly, incorporating royal symbols and intricate details befitting ceremonial attire. Every fold was measured with exactness, every embellishment placed with purpose. She imagined the prince wearing her creation, standing tall and proud before the entire kingdom in the magnificent regalia. The thought filled her with a courage she had never felt before. But she was not foolish. She knew her father might try to stop her. So she made 2 sets of royal regalia. One she kept hidden at home. The other she buried in a secret spot deep in the forest, wrapped carefully in cloth and tucked beneath the roots of an ancient tree. If he destroys one, she thought, I will still have the other. The night before the competition, Nia stayed awake until the moon was high in the sky. Her hands ached, but she did not stop. When the final stitch was complete, she held up the garment and allowed herself the smallest smile. It was perfect. Every detail reflected her skill, her heart, and her mother's legacy. Tomorrow, she thought, everything will change. On the morning of the competition, Nia woke early. Her heart pounded with a mixture of excitement and fear. She dressed carefully and wrapped the royal regalia in a cloth bag, tucking it under her shawl. She moved silently through the house, stepping lightly to avoid waking her father. But just as she reached the door, his voice cut through the silence like a blade. Where do you think you are going? Nia froze. Kofi stood in the doorway, his eyes blazing with anger. Before she could speak, he crossed the room in 2 strides and ripped the bag from her hands. What is this? He demanded. He pulled out the royal regalia, and for a brief moment, his expression faltered. The fabric was exquisite. The stitching was flawless. The ceremonial details were breathtaking. But then his face hardened. You think you can defy me, he said quietly, his voice trembling with rage. You think you can take the life she lost? Father, please. Nia reached out desperately. Kofi pulled out a pair of scissors. The metal gleamed coldly in the early morning light. No, Nia whispered, her voice breaking. Please, that is my dream. The sound echoed through the room. One clean cut through the royal sash. Nia's legs gave out. She fell to her knees. But Kofi did not stop. He cut the ceremonial robes. He cut the embroidered panels. He cut the decorative pieces into fragments so small they could never be repaired. When nothing whole remained, he walked outside and set the scraps on fire. Nia watched as her work turned to ash. She could not speak. She could not cry. She could only stare as the flames consumed everything. Kofi turned to her, his face empty of mercy. Your dream ends here, he said coldly. Nothing of yours will ever matter. Then he left for the fields, leaving Nia kneeling among the ashes. For a long moment, Nia did not move. She stared at the ashes, her mind numb. Then, slowly, she stood. Her father had destroyed the first set of regalia, but he did not know about the second. Nia wiped her tears and ran. She ran through the village, past the market, and into the forest. Her feet flew over roots and stones, her breath coming in gasps. Finally, she reached the ancient tree. She dropped to her knees and dug frantically, her fingers clawing through the dirt until she felt the cloth. She pulled it out carefully, unwrapping it with trembling hands. The royal regalia was perfect, untouched, every stitch exactly as she had made it, every ceremonial detail in place. Nia held it close to her chest and whispered, "Thank you." Then she ran toward the palace. By the time Nia reached the palace courtyard, the competition had already begun. Crowds filled the space, and artisans from across the kingdom displayed their creations on long tables. Nia's clothes were dusty, her face was streaked with sweat, but her eyes burned with determination. She carefully placed her garment on the display table and stepped back. The moment she unwrapped it, the crowd fell silent. People gasped. Whispers spread like wildfire. The fabric seemed to glow in the sunlight. The colors were rich and vibrant, the patterns intricate and mesmerizing. Every detail was perfection. The queen approached first, her eyes widening in astonishment. "Who made this?" she asked. The king followed, his expression one of awe. "This is extraordinary," he murmured. Then the prince stepped forward. He was tall and handsome, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. He reached out and touched the ceremonial fabric lightly, as if afraid it might vanish. "This is beyond anything I have ever seen," he said softly. He looked up at Nia. "Did you make this?" Nia's voice was barely a whisper. "Yes, Your Highness." The prince smiled. May I try it on? Nia nodded, her hands trembling. The prince took the regalia carefully and stepped behind a curtain. Moments later, he emerged, and the entire courtyard erupted in applause. The royal regalia fit him perfectly. The ceremonial robes draped elegantly over his shoulders, the colors complemented his complexion, and the intricate symbols made him look every bit the prince. He was strong, noble, and dignified. He looked like royalty incarnate. The prince turned slowly, his smile growing wider. "It feels as though it was made just for me," he said. The queen's eyes shone with pride. "Truly remarkable. This is not just clothing. This is art." The king raised his hand, and the crowd fell silent. "Step forward, young woman," he commanded. Nia's legs shook as she walked to the center of the courtyard. "You are the winner of this competition," the king declared. "Your skill is unmatched. Your work is a gift to this kingdom." The crowd erupted in cheers. As the celebration continued, whispers spread through the crowd. Villagers began speaking of what had happened that morning, how Kofi had burned his daughter's first royal regalia and tried to stop her from entering the competition. The king's expression grew serious. "Bring this man forward," he ordered. Kofi was summoned to the palace. He stood before the king, his face pale with fear. The king looked at him for a long moment before speaking. "You destroyed your daughter's work," he said calmly. "You tried to crush her gift. You blamed an innocent child for the death of her mother." The crowd listened in silence. "Your wife died bringing life into this world," the king continued. "That is tragedy. But instead of honoring her memory by loving the child she gave her life for, you chose bitterness. You chose cruelty." Kofi said nothing. His eyes dropped to the ground. "A child does not choose how she is born," the king said firmly. "She does not choose fate. Your daughter is not responsible for your pain. She is a living legacy of the woman you loved, and you have spent her entire life punishing her for existing." The king raised his hand. "For your actions, you will be punished. You will serve the kingdom in labor for 1 full year. Perhaps in that time, you will learn the value of the gift you tried to destroy." The villagers murmured in agreement. Everyone could see that Kofi's anger had poisoned his own life. From that day forward, Nia's life changed completely. She received her reward, land, gold, and recognition. But more importantly, she received her freedom. She built a workshop where she could create without fear. Young girls from across the region came to learn from her, and she taught them with patience and kindness. Her designs became famous throughout the kingdom. Nobles and commoners alike sought her work, and her name became synonymous with beauty and skill. But the most unexpected gift came from the prince himself. In the weeks following the competition, the prince visited Nia's workshop often. He would sit and watch her work, asking questions and listening to her stories. He admired not just her talent, but her strength, her resilience, and her gentle heart. One evening, as the sun set over the village, the prince took Nia's hand. "I have seen many beautiful things in my life," he said softly, "but none as beautiful as the spirit of the woman who created that regalia. Nia, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Nia's eyes filled with tears, not of sorrow, but of joy. "Yes," she whispered. They were married in a grand ceremony, and Nia became the princess of the kingdom. But she never forgot where she came from. She continued to sew, to teach, and to create. And every time she held a needle and thread, she remembered the fire that had refused to die, the dream that had survived every storm. Years later, Kofi completed his sentence. He was a changed man, humbled and full of regret. He came to Nia's workshop one day, his head bowed. "I do not deserve your forgiveness," he said quietly. "But I want you to know, I am sorry. I was wrong. Your mother would have been so proud of you." Nia looked at her father for a long moment. Then she nodded. "I forgive you, father," she said gently. "Not because you deserve it, but because I choose to be free." Kofi wept, and for the first time since Amora's death, the weight on his heart began to lift. Nia lived a long and fulfilling life. She raised children who knew they were loved. She created garments that brought joy to thousands. And she proved, once and for all, that a dream born from love cannot be destroyed by hatred. With patience, courage, and unwavering faith, It will always find a way to rise and create something beautiful. Thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe for more and don't forget to like, comment, and share.